Hello, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us for LACP's Pride Month Artist Talks. This year, we are focusing on LGBTQIA plus photographer artists who are currently working in Los Angeles. I've been honored to moderate all three evening talks, and I know you're going to enjoy tonight's as well. Tonight, we will be spending some time with Coyote Park and Reynaldo Rivera. They will each be sharing some of their work, and then towards the end of the evening, we'll have some time for Q&A. So please post your questions in the chat as we go, and then at the end of the night, we can address them. So let's get started, shall we? Coyote Park is a two-spirit Korean-German Yurok native artist from Honolulu, Hawaii. They currently lives in Tongva Territory, Los Angeles. They are a transgender artist that centers their practice in photography, writing, performance, painting, producing, and creative direction as modes of storytelling. Park merges their written work with their passion for image making through their photo series entitled All Kin is Bloodkin, 2020 to current, surrounding themes of chosen family, rebirth, and intimacy. Current works of theirs are Heart of a Shapeshifter, Two-Spirit Love Medicine, a poetry short essay and prose collection, and Destiny in Sedona, a QT BIPOC love story film. Their work is a pathway to healing and dreaming up new worlds. Coyote, welcome. It's so great to meet you, and thank you so much for joining us this evening. And I just want to hand it over to you. Take it away.
Thank you for the intro. Ayukui Woklokimekinas. Hello. My name is Coyote Park. I am currently on Tongva land, Tongva territory, Los Angeles. I have a pretty packed little presentation that I'm going to be going through, so I'm excited to just jump in and share that. I know in the intro talked a little bit more about my background and my practice. Most of my work has to do with like visual arts and is centered around photography and storytelling. I'm currently working on a feature film that is an extension of the like chosen family kinships that is portrayed in my photography. So I'm just gonna share my screen and kind of start going through it. So here's actually a self-portrait that I've created of myself for this piece that's like offerings to my elders. My family comes from Pacific diaspora and is Korean, white, and Yurok, which is from like Northern California. My family's native to the Klamath River. So this here has traditional Yurok and Katuk patternings in the background. I'm holding peonies, which is symbolic in Korean culture. And then kind of go through. So I put some photos that are from my more recent body of work. So it has images that are self-portraits that I've created earlier this year, just to kind of familiarize with like the types of work that I'm creating around. This here is a photo with my lover Hercules, who is also indigenous and is also from like Pacific diaspora and has family in Hawaii. But this here was photographed in Chino Hills. A lot of my photos have to do with like a lot of holding and kind of thinking about the frame that is used in photo making or image creating as the space that I can kind of create a new world within it. Especially thinking about safety and navigating the outdoor world as a trans person. I like to think about this as a space that our own conditions and terms exist for ourselves. And so it's something that I've been kind of like looking to continue creating worlds with the like photographic frame and to return to like land body relations as documented with like my loved ones. This here is a photograph of my wife and I doing our hormone shots, me doing my wife's estradiol shot, my wife doing my testosterone shot. This image is called Weekly Ritual, and it's the image I made at the end of last year in collaboration with my wife. all of the images that I create when I'm creating with my kin and my chosen family is all very collaboration based. I like to think of it more as like images that I've like made and created with others, rather than being something that is taken of like my loved ones, especially thinking about the histories of photography, especially indigenous spaces and queer spaces that could be a little bit more extractive, or having the sitter be, you know, especially like with anthropology and the ways that other indigenous people have been photographed. It's something where I really want to have shared agency with the people that I create with. So a lot of the photos that I make are with self-timer, and it's stuff that I'm truly being present with the person who I'm creating with, and we get to experience that together rather than me just being behind the lens. This image here is something that was made more recently. This was made a month ago in Arizona. A lot of the other images and images that you'll continue to see are images made in my home in Los Angeles. And the first one was made a little bit right outside in Chino Hills. This one here is made in Arizona. I go on a lot of road trips with my wife, which is actually kind of the origin to the love story film that I'm making, Destiny in Sedona, that has to do with these exes that are on a road trip together and rekindling, but are like non-monogamous. So they have all of their other like loves and like flames that come along the way. And it's something that kind of came from these moments that I spend with my wife. We just have these like little adventures together and the ways that we reconnect through the car. And like it's something that these spaces that we enter, the agency that we're given, even with being able to like drive together as two trans people, and um, something that's been really beautiful with that is, and with the love story film or showing non-monogamy or multi-love, is a lot of my images have to do with myself with like my lovers, usually people that like I've been seeing for like a long time and have built this like network of care and conversations, and we really sit with the images and have these really beautiful conversations about them. This one here, I really is one of my favorite images that I've recently made because of thinking about like what do I want my like future to feel like, what do I want home space to feel like and look like with my wife, and really just has a lot to do with like rest and a lot of opulence and a lot of abundance. And then, so this takes me to photo series that I've been working through. Alkin is Bloodkin, as mentioned in my little intro earlier, that was given, is this series called Alkin is Bloodkin, thinking about kinship in Indigenous spaces and BIPOC spaces for like queer people of color. The way that kinship has not only been through my blood ties with my elders, my father, my grandma, and all the people that my ancestors that have carried me on their backs, but also my queer family and trans family that have been my like younger trans sister, Anuhea, or my like older like trans like elders, and my trans sibling Nassim, who I have this really important image that I've made with Nassim that I'll show a little later in these slides. So I did a show at Oponi Space in Oahu, which I'm actually returning to a little later this week. And I grew up in Honolulu, Hawaii. I'm not indigenous to Hawaii, but I am indigenous to California. I just grew up in the Kingdom of Hawaii and have a lot of conversations surrounding like kinship ties there and community. And this here was something I really wanted to gift back to my extended like brown, like queer Asian, indigenous, like trans family on island that come from diaspora, and what does it mean to see bodies like ours, or to see trans love, or to see trans people thriving, trans people taking care of each other. And it was something that I really needed to see on island that I didn't have access to besides online spaces. So having a physical show was like a necessity to me that I wanted to gift back to all the people that raised me. So in this series, I have kind of lagging a little bit on here. So let me make sure this is going through. Okay. Oh, okay. This is the image I was trying to go to. So this image here is of my grandma. Because archival reasons for a lot of my family photos with my like parents and grandparents, left out of the eyes just because of just different places I'm at with my family, especially around like my transition, around polyamory, a lot of like hard conversations, but still wanted to bring that in almost as a part of the conversation of this show, that a lot of the people that have supported me through my different love ties and through my transition have been my chosen family. And so thinking about kinship structures is like not having just blood family and then my chosen family, but all of those people being like my bio family and just as important, if not like more important at different times of my life. This here is a photo on the left, more photos from the archives that I pulled into the show. So the photo on the left is of my like one of my first boyfriends in high school who is also trans and is someone who's really, really close to me in my life now. Oli Oli. Oli Oli and I wanted this to be archivally in the show to kind of show these like ongoing histories and futures that are like coexisting, like the fact that like, oh, trans people in high school or trans people like loving on each other is not just something that's like now emerging, but has always been there. And also as a way to kind of bring up like my more fond memories of growing up on the island. And then on the side is a photo of me with my sweetie M, who's in a lot of like my photographic work, but is someone that I've been seeing for 3 years now. We make like little trips. We like to tease that we have a very Brokeback Mountain relationship in the sense of us like meeting up with each other every now and then to like go camping or something. And so this image here is just called Caretaking with My Sweetie M. In the show, there's this, I wanted to center it on my upbringing on the island. So here's these photos of Nu'uanu Valley, the Pali Highway, thinking about these tunnels as liminal spaces. And this triptych that was in the show was put right next to a photo of me healing from top surgery. So imagining that liminal space and healing and thinking about these more transformative spaces and spiritual moments and kind of like I really wanted to situate the like thinking about my body through transformation, also thinking about these transformative spaces that I grew up with. And then this image here is like the biggest print in the show is on the main wall, and it was something that was taken like in this space. My wife and I created this together where it was in Aiea, where my family home is. It has these curtains that my stepmom made and sewed together. And this image here was like a very hard time for me because of the acceptance of my family and being in this home space with like this family that I'm building with my wife. And so this and my wife and I in a T for T, like trans for trans marriage, was something that's like having this moment of like love and closeness together in a place where it was a little bit harder for me to celebrate that or have that celebrated by my family that was, you know, just downstairs in the making of this image. Um, but it's still something that is really extension of what home feels like to me. So with these images here, I have the one with like my trans sister caretaking again after the moment of my top surgery with who I consider like my bio brother, like Sima Deub, and then also then being held in the water in my hometown of Jules. So all of these are placed within the show as in the documentation earlier. This here is called Double Date and Makiki, and really just showing these like queer trans like loves and partnerships, and this double date I had with like my other indigenous queer like extended kin on island. This work for All Kin is Blood Kin has been an ongoing project that I feel like is going to be a body of work that I kind of take with me and grow with me for a long time in my life as my family keeps extending and as I keep thinking and moving through what family and home spaces and growing like ongoing futures look like. So this is actually from some slides in the book prototype that I've been working with. So this here of like my altar space and then healing from my surgery and these detail shots. And then these are like my vows in Korean. That's written in Hangul to my wife. And then these like little detail shots of us. Um, and then this here is actually just a piece of writing, and it has a lot of different found objects in the book, with my sweetie, where I was asking my sweetie what my sweetie's relationship with kinship is, and some writing from them. That takes me into some newer series I've been working through, which one of them is called 10,000 Honeymoons. It's a series that is like co-created and really, I don't know, just a very romantic series I've been doing with my wife. It's a series where we've been documenting ourselves in motel spaces, thinking about the history of motels for trans people and intimacy being something that's hidden in hotels and motels, especially for me, like in my own history with like sex work and thinking about the ways that trans bodies are treated in these spaces. It's something that I wanted to kind of bring really sentimental like love into this space. So we've been creating images in love motels. And my wife is a director and a filmmaker, so we really wanted to really cultivate this like old Hollywood glamour kind of feeling in it, with all the reds in it. And I feel like tonally, like with the colors, is a lot different than my other work. Um, but it's something that I wanted to capture that still like, you know, like showgirls kind of feeling. But has been like some of my most fond memories has been creating work with my wife in this series, because every night and space we've been in is just such an extension of like my favorite memories with my wife, and we always like look back to these different trips that we've been on, even thinking about uh the road trip stuff that I was like talking about earlier, these like journeys that we've had, and a lot of these like memories that kind of paste together through this work. I really wanted to have this series be like a true like celebration of like physical intimacy. A lot of my work has to do with depictions of sexuality. I think that for me, working in porn industry and working with like the body all the time, creating work has allowed me to have like my own authorship over my body, and to share that with the people that I hold closest to me. Okay. Yeah, it's lagging every time I click it. Okay. And then this is the last one from the 10,000 Honeymoon series, from different images I pulled from the archives from that body of work. And then this series is kind of like one that my wife and I return to whenever we have time to like take a little trip, or can like, you know, pay the money towards these like different spaces. Um, so going back to talking about like portraying depictions of like trans like sexuality and physical, like, I don't know, just photographing sex with like myself as a trans person, and with my wife. I did this show recently. This is some photos from the show opening at the Museum of Sex earlier. This It opened in the beginning of June, so we're still in June right now. It feels like July. So this work here is from the body in its absence. It has one of the images from that work, from the 10,000 Honeymoons work. So it has this photograph called Crimson and Clover that's on these like velvet satin sheets. So kind of continuing that body of work in the Hollywood glamour, thinking about these like really rich like satins and textures, and photographing off of the mirrors and landscapes in it. But then it also, the archive that was pulled for the Museum of Sex show also had some work from Alkina's Bloodkin. It had some work from different bodies of mine. This one here is called The Strap, which is what it the title is. Something that I work with a lot in my photo work is a natural light, a lot of just like, you know, gorgeous California sunlight. And I don't really use a lot of I don't use a lot of artificial light. Most of it is just what's in camera. Um, and this is also why I was going back to saying how important it is for me in doing the self-timer images, is being to be really, really in the moment with the people that I work with and creating with. This is called Mother of Pearl. This is also in the Museum of Sex exhibition that's up in New York until October. So it's still up for anybody who's going to be in New York soon. And then I'm like clicking it and just seeing when it will go. Okay, okay. So this here is a newer series. So a lot of my kind of series are these like conversations that I want to have through photo and through like visual language that I always just kind of come back to when it feels right. I'm very patient with my projects and know it's things that I like return to. So for this one, for Divinely Protected, I've only worked with three couples, my wife and I included as like the first couple I worked with. So as you saw in a lot of the previous images, a lot of my photographs have to do with like the bed space, the bedroom space, or two people like holding each other in their own home space. And so with this work, I wanted to think more of like what the bed could be. And so I thought a lot about the altar that was previously photographed when I showed these samples from All Kin is Bloodkin, the book prototype. I have this photo of an altar that's in my living room that my wife and I always do like little ceremony to and put like little things out on. And with that altar, I was just thinking about like the bed space for my wife and I both. As for me, I'm mixed, but my wife and I are both Korean. Thinking about the ancestors that look over us. I was thinking about that with all the people that I photograph and but specifically working with other BIPOC, like trans and queer people. And so working with other trans and queer people of color, I was thinking about the ancestors that they carry with them, that they feel divinely protected by, that they feel like look over and smile upon their relationship and are celebrating them and are rooting for them. And with Divinely Protected, I was like, I want to treat the bed space as an altar. So I did this prompt where I was working with couples to bring in different images that are sentimental, or not images, but bringing in different items that are sentimental to them, or are like gifts or photographs or offerings. It started with this image here, was the first one. The image previously was of Hokuli'i and Liam, who are in Oahu in Hawaii, and we're the first couple I really worked with after this image. And it was like the most like magical experience, and this is one like a shoot that I literally almost started crying from while working with both of them, because of just like really feeling like they're loved together, and the way that just like our conversations before and after the shoot and my relationship to the both of them. I think this is why I'm so patient with my image making, because of who I work with is like really, really intentional, and I like just take my time with it. This photo here with my wife was just shown at this all trans art show in London that I just got back from. And that show, this basically I built like an altar in front of it, and I had candles and flowers and different photos or things from my wife and I, and like different written pieces, and I lit all the candles and like blew all of them out individually afterwards. This image here, the offerings that we have and the things that we put on our altar is actually things that we just put from our altar onto the bed. So we have these like prayer scrolls from Korea, the sea salt from my hometown in Oahu, these photos of us on the beach from like years ago, different like incense that is burning from a temple in Korea, and like these different like California wildflowers and some paintings of mine. And then on my website, I list all the different items that are people's altars. This is my most recent image that I created for the Divinely Protected series. So this one is of Lauren and Iwe here in Los Angeles. And both of them are just like, this one is like the longest list of things at the altar. But I think this is something that I truly feel like I'm being invited in on a little date with every couple that I photograph with. So I've just been wanting to return to this, but really wanting to have it be with people that have been in like long-term relationships together or that I've known for a while. um, Back to the bed space, back to where it all started. This is the one of the first ever images I made in the bed space with my wife T. This is from the Chosen group show on queer families and chosen families at the Leslie Lohman Museum in New York. This photograph actually is something that I took the day after my wedding with my wife. So this was taken a few years back. This one's called Morning After. It was photographed literally the morning after the wedding. And this was acquired by like the Leslie Lohman and has kind of started my ongoing relationship with the museum, which is gonna like bring me into the future works I'm gonna talk about. Here's more from that. This here is a photo of Hmong with Hmong's chosen family image that they created. It was really cool to be alongside so many artists that I just have such deep love for. And so this is definitely one of my favorite group shows to be a part of. Um, Maybe I didn't click. Oh, okay, okay. Okay, so that brings me to what I'm doing now. I'm currently working on my solo exhibition that's coming up in January of 2023. It's going to be up from January to April. That I'm working with the Leslie Lohman, where it started from these reimaginings from the archives there, where I was looking at different paintings and photographs and illustrations and different ceramics from the museum's archives, and then thinking through of like how do I place like my trans body and my lover's trans bodies into an archive, or how do we build new archives? And then in that I'm doing like it's a gallery with 4 different walls, and I really wanted it to be a work that showed kind of like with being with people that there's an unspoken understanding about how we understand each other's queer energy, and really thinking about what does it mean when I look at older images from queer and trans artists. What does it mean when I look at films or media, and what does it mean when I see parts of myself in it, but wanting to like create work that has more ephemera that I can connect to, and people in my like communities. And with that work, I have these images that I've created so far with my sweetie M. This is from a very specific item in the museum's archives. That's like this egg that has like these paintings on it. They're like these erotic paintings with like rope and flowers all over them. Um, at the museum, I have either 2 or 3 more people that I'm going to be creating work with throughout the rest of this year, leading up to the show and leading up to the installation in January. And so it's just been fun to kind of be playful with these really gorgeous, like queer art archives. There's this one image. A lot of them had to do too with like rope. I was using a lot of references to work from other queer Asian artists. So here's one that I created with my sweetie, who both of us are like Korean Asian. My sweetie's Filipino and I'm Korean, and we it's been really cool to kind of uplift and highlight like those different artists, which is like a long list of the ones that I'm kind of working with. Um, but I've been thinking a lot for myself as a two-spirit person of like my something that's talked a lot about is how like gender being like a prism where it's what light hits it and what's reflected off of it. So it's going to be fun to have this physical space with not only photos of me and my sweetie, but also images with like other people and that I feel like bring out different energy of mine and different presentations and how I like appear. And so it's just gonna be a show that feels very like cyclical, like these different mirrors, like kind of like a little fun house where it's all like faced to each other. That shows something that I'm kind of just taking and working on this side right now while I'm working on my feature film. So kind of balancing the whole like multidisciplinary artist life out altogether. I also do like different paintings that I've had in group shows or commissions for that. And just finished publishing my book and working on more writing pieces. But this has been the biggest kind of like photographic project that I'm kind of now venturing into. So it's like the very early stages, including this image here, which is one of my favorites from that's going to be in this solo show. And this one here is off of this like really, really gorgeous painting called The Rose. And we're still going to be like either pulling in pieces from the archives or just referencing it through wall text. But yeah, I'm just like this image here is something where it really is something that attaches so much memories of my sweetie coming to stay with me and visiting, and us being kind of like little interior decorators together and set designers and building all of this. And is I feel like my photo work is more of documentation of moments that I want to sit with longer, rather than me trying to fill a gap of representation or fill a gap of what's not there, or trying to. And I feel like this here, especially when thinking about the reimaginings of the archive, is less to be like, here's what's not in the archives, now I'm going to build a new archive of my own, but it's more so to be like, here's these like this feeling, and here's this like for me with my sweetie, just like this really like faggy like trans like gay boyhood, and being like, here's this moment that I want to sit with longer, that I want to experience longer, and for other people to experience and sit with. And yeah, I see my work as a two-spirit artist is something that's like things to like experiences that I want to hold on to. Um, and yeah, I always like call it like, oh, professional or fine arts dad photographs. So they're very like, oh, let's remember this, like let's have this as a keepsake, like let's come together and make this. And so even the more like staged or posed ones still afterwards are just like so playful, and something that I can just remember like going to go see a movie afterwards after doing this, and not being something where it's like, here's our time slot of creating together, but like, oh, here's us going getting like brunch, and like really is why I've just create with some of the same like people over and over in my life. And I'm very like, I'm starting to open it up to creating with more people in my life, especially in the solo show, that I'm like not creating images with my wife for that, even though I've created so many images with my wife. And I'm so excited in my lifetime to create more and more art with her, and to work on this film, because she's directing it and I'm producing and acting in it. And so it's something where like the ways that we're able to do storytelling together, that we still have a degree of separation to it. And I'm just thinking about all these different ways of like retelling stories or creating new stories. And I have a anthology coming out soon that one of my pieces is in, called Lucid Pleasures. That's going to be at the Brooklyn Zine Fair next month in July, where it's an anthology of all queer people of color, where we're writing erotic mythology pieces and retellings from our cultures. So I have a European Korean folk story piece that's like a reimagining of that. So the ways that we kind of build these new worlds through art. And that's all that my practice is. And this is all kind of like more of the photo, the bulk of the photo things that I've been doing. But yeah.
Thank you so much, Coyote. Thank you for sharing your work. And that Leslie Lohman show sounds amazing. And I hope I'll get to see it.
Thank you.
All right. Well, now, I just wanted to remind everyone we're going to have a Q&A at the end. So as the questions come up for you, please pop those in the chat, and then we will read through those at the end. But now we're going to move on to our second guest of the evening, Mr. Reynaldo Rivera. Reynaldo Rivera is a photographer known for capturing historic, queer, transgender, predominantly Latinx scenes, such as clubs and house parties in the late 20th century Los Angeles. Some of the clubs he photographed at include La Plaza, the Silver Lake Lounge, Muggies, and Little Joy. Rivera's black and white photographs are known for their intimate documentation of and focus on the everyday life and private moments of Latinx transgender women, artists, and drag performers at the time. Rivera cites this as a type of activism since gentrification and a lack of public records of these individuals, many of whom died young due to violence, have led to the marginalization and erasure of these communities and cultures. In this way, Rivera is known for bringing visibility to queer, Latinx, Angelino history. Reynaldo, are you there? I really love your work, and I'm very excited to hear you tell us about it.
I'm here.
Take it away.
I'm here and I'm queer. Okay, so I'll start with some of these ones I'm showing right now are just stuff I shot recently of friends. So let us begin. This is actually one of my neighbor. She has a dry cleaners, and so I shot this stuff downtown. In some of these areas that I feel still have that old feel of Los Angeles, which, I guess you could say has all but disappeared in this new, super safe city. For the sake of safety, it's what's kind of came with this new suburban kind of Los Angeles. Anyway, I'll just show this is some of the new stuff I've been shooting. Well, this is an old one. This is like, what, 85. This is Moogie's. No, this is the Silver Lake Lounge. Sorry. This is the Silver Lake Lounge, and that was Mrs. Alex. And oh my God, I just forgot her name. Oh, well, we'll go back to that someday. This is Mrs. Alex. She was actually one of the performers I met early on that, got me, you could say, like the pass to the back room, to the dressing rooms back in the day, because she was friends with the other performers. This is Alicia Armendariz, Alice Bag, and my sister Connie at Halloween. This one was just, I don't even remember his name. This is Angela at La Plaza. Olga, that's the name. The person back there with the glasses, that was the mama of La Plaza. But there were two Olgas, the Olga from the Silver Lake Lounge and the Olga from La Plaza. This is Angel, wait, I forgot her fucking name. Anyway, and Mrs. Alex and Angela, yes. Angela and me. I'll just go fast because there's a ton of stuff. This is my friend Aneta and my husband back in the 90s, once when we were young. This is in our apartment in Echo Park. This is Astrid Haddad at Rhino Records in somewhere Westwood, I guess. This was just a bar scene in the early 90s. Bliss, that was the guy with the hat. He's still around. That's his name. And an ex, a bad ex. This is my friend Sandra and her ex. There's a lot of exes here. This is one of my favorite images of a bus stop in Mexico. I always felt like I was that chick in the TV in the novela. Oh, this is my daughter Sari, who left this earth a few months ago. Oh, anyway, this is Chaka Khan. This is just random stuff. This was the audience watching Chaka Khan. Oh, friends. Oh, Cindy Gomez. This was we're doing a rent party. Imagine our rent was like $375, and we still needed rent parties to pay that amount. So this is in our living room across from Echo Park Lake. Yes, the good old days. La Cindy. I haven't seen her in a long time. This is Coco Fusco. Some performance. somewhere. A lot of the dates are gone. Halloween, my sister had similar performance. This was Cookie and her husband at this motel where LA Live is at now. They dumped all these cheap motels there for this LA Live. Yep, I remember right when I took this photo, she was telling Benny, her husband, at 6 o'clock, I get the best stuff. You could see it in her eyes. She had like glare. And this was actually in the bathroom of that motel. I still have the keys that girl's wearing around her neck. I think this was like in 94, somewhere around there. This was, what did I used to call this? Oh, the Madonna of Cunt Club. And I mean Madonna like a saint, you know, not Madonna the performer. Oh, this was Halloween in 89, I think. Cynthia, that's my dad and my stepbrothers, my dad again. In my village where I grew up, where I lived as a child. This guy was a dancer. He asked me to do some photos for his portfolio, but I ended up doing this for myself. I really like this image. This was I took this in front of the Bradbury building across from the $1 Million Theater. This was my sister's birthday party. Well, David and Connie, you could see it in the back. In that sign on the wall, it says happy birthday, Connie and David. This is, what was her name? Danita Sparks from L7. I did this photo for some platform. We did some fashion thing. One of those made up fashion shoots I used to do for Gloria Oland for the LA Weekly. Oh, this was at some lesbian bar in Silver Lake, Dreams, I think. It was on Silver Lake Boulevard. New Year's of 1989. Actually, this was the year I met my now husband. Wait, no, not 89, 1990. New Year's of 1990. Yes, that was my sister and her ex, 2 exes ago. Friends, another Halloween. This was Stephanie. This person, this was actually taken in Colorado, in Denver. She was one of my mama's friends that used to, you know, era vestida, so se vestía. She used to get dressed in her bathroom. She used to use my mama's bathroom to get dressed up before she went out, because I guess her family didn't know. So I did these photos of her back in, I would say like 92. This is Elvis, sometime in the early 90s. It might have been the late 80s, I don't remember. This is one of my favorite photos of Elise Reguer and Javier Orozco for, it was a New Year's party, but this is one of the negatives that burnt in the fire. I had a fire here a few years ago that burned a lot of my work. So this was one of those. So you can see this one has way more damage. The other one, they edited out. Just friends. Oh, that's my dad and his new Jaina at the time, and my partner and my sister's husband. So it's a funny photo. That was in my village in San Diego de la Unión, Guanajuato, para servirles. This was a fashion show downtown. I don't remember the year. This is Francesco Siqueiros. Going out. Just us being us. This was shot actually more recently. This was La Plaza, Gabby at La Plaza. Gabby and Laura, she used to be Laura Leon, the one to the left. Gabby and Melissa at La Plaza, Gabby. Oh, these were taken actually with my first camera. Well, the first camera I bought new. And this was the murder site of my grandfather in La Ciudad de Mexico, in Tepito. He used to live in some vecindad in Tepito, and I went with my dad to pick up his belongings. And so I thought I was going to be a real reportage, you know. This was the, so this must have been in the early 80s, like 82 maybe. That's my grandmother, Reynaldo Rivera. This was a party thing. Oh, this was New Year's, not New Year's, Halloween of like 89. My sister and a friend, my friend, I can only remember what we call pan, Jerry. Little pan, my sister and Daniel Martinez, my sister Herminia Rivera y Daniel Martinez. Oh, look, this is a really early one. This was, again, taken actually with my really first one, the one I got from my dad, the camera. So my sister here was like 17. Crazy, huh? Time flies. It's a long ass time ago. I think that was like in 82, 83 maybe. And that's her now. Well, actually, to take it back, that's her in the 90s now. That was like fucking 25 years ago. My two sisters, Connie and Erminia. And that's her again in the olden days. And this, I think this was like 79, 80. And Erminia in the 90s. And that's Ruben Martinez, Francesco Siqueiros, and my sister. And there's my sister Young again. You know, they were my muses, as we say, you know, as I was saying before. Actually, I didn't. This is, oh my God, fuck, I always forget his name. Fuck, I can't remember. I just blanked. Tommy Chiffon, yes. La Chiffon. Oh, True Love. Más Amor. This is Chris Kraus. I took these in 96 on Broadway, or was it spring? Yes, this is Tequila Mockingbird at the, where do we take this? At the not the Vine Street, wherever, somewhere in LA. Friends, Pauletta and Ivan, more friends. Friend with and without. This was a study, some bar on Western with my friend Jerry. Okay, I'm just gonna go through this really fast because there's too much stuff. This was my sister's babysitter. She was in a band called the Pandoras, but this is back in the like 83. More friends. This is one of my favorite photos. These two girls who I just ran into recently again. I had not seen them for like 25 years. I took this at El Conquistador, this restaurant in on Sunset back in 97, I think. And this is Mrs. Alex and my man, my current husband. I think you saw these maybe. This is at La Plaza. I know there's a lot of stuff. Anyway, there you go. I mean, have I spoken enough? These are good.
You still have 20 minutes, so you don't need to rush through.
I don't know. Are you going to ask me questions, or am I can just ramble on about all this stuff?
Whichever you'd like.
You know, a lot of these performers. Well, I did an interview earlier, so I keep forgetting what I said earlier, what I'm saying now. That a lot of these performers, you know, well, the difficulty of being trusted enough to go back into these spaces, that I took a lot of this stuff. Well, with the performers, for instance, you know, was not very common. gaining that trust and you know, like documenting people the way they wanted to be seen, as opposed to who I thought they were. I mean, it was really about them. And and you know, it's like the way I saw these folk. I mean, I thought they were glamorous and amazing and all this other stuff. And so I really tried to show this in the work, that, and also the way that they revealed themselves to me. You know, I wasn't interested in uncovering anything. You know what I mean? It's like trying to get at something that they weren't willing to show me. Actually, this is Mrs. Alex. This is when she first got here. And you could see, I mean, what she looked like later. Because these images were taken way before. These were taken like when she first got here. This is Olga and Melissa. Anyhow, parties.
How did you get started taking pictures, Reynaldo?
Well, you know, it started with buying a camera from my dad. You know, it's like he used to sell stolen stuff. So, you know, one day he's walking down the street with this box of stuff, and I stopped him and I saw this camera in there, and I asked him to give me this. So he was like, yeah, sure, you can have it for $150. So I paid him the 150, which I thought was a shitload of money, and it was then. And that's where it all started. You know, at that time, I had just gotten a job working at a cannery, because before this, I was just working like a migrant worker with my dad, which paid nothing. And this cannery allowed me, I mean, it paid me enough money to allow me to just basically do photography, because photography was always, you know, a hobby for the wealthy, because it was expensive. I mean, film was expensive, developing was, everything about it was expensive. And so, you know, that I picked up this camera. Well, and also, you know, right before this, well, I was really into movies. And so I actually, if you could say that I wanted to do cinema first. And then photography came kind of as a default thing, because, you know, I got this camera. So I thought, this is, you know, the next best thing. And so I started taking photos of whatever was around me, and all these people that, well, you know, I mean, people that I think ordinarily wouldn't have been documented in any way. And I'm talking about the earlier stuff back in the early 80s, because like myself, they would have been, I guess, people, they weren't around someone with a camera. Like, I didn't grow up around people that took photos. You know, I think, you know, what we did, you know, and I'm talking about my village in Mexico, most of the folk remembered family members and stuff by talking about them, you know, like that whole oral tradition thing. And I used to love sitting there listening to the stories. So in a way, I continued this with my work. I mean, you could say most of my work tells stories, you know, they're very complex. You look at the photos, they tell you stuff. And I think this comes from this. And anyway, so yes, I started doing photography with this one camera I got from my dad. But it, you know, the journey was long. It took me a very long time to learn how to use this camera, and it was all trial and error, you know, because I didn't know how to use the damn thing. So I learned from this woman that used to, that worked at this photo mat that I used to bring all my stuff to. And, you know, I kept bringing roll after roll that wouldn't come out. And at one point I was just like, I don't know what's wrong. You know, why isn't this stuff coming out? And she started explaining to me like, well, are you doing this right? Are you doing this? And so she's the one that taught me what all these knobs were for. And, you know, then the first people I photographed were the women that used to clean the hotel I lived in with my dad, El Hotel San Leo, the Hotel St. Leo, you know, and it was this old granny named Minnie and her these two young girls that worked for her. And so I actually photographed Minnie and the two girls. Unfortunately, all that stuff is long gone. You know, I wish I would still have this, but you know, it's been lost. You know, who knows? That was so long ago.
Did you have shows of this work back then, or was this not something that you really showed people at the time?
No, I mean, when I first started doing this work, that was the farthest thing from my mind. I mean, you know, I never really, I wasn't looking at this stuff as like, oh, I'm creating art, or, you know, I'm documenting marginalized people. I mean, first of all, that vocabulary wasn't even there, and and this idea of showing the work was also not there. I mean, you know, I've mentioned this before that, you know, I grew, and I think most of the people from my generation really, well, I should say that because I'm sure a lot of the wealthier Latino folk might have seen art as a venue for them, but most of us saw this as like something white folk did, you know, and so what I was doing, just I was taking photos of things that mattered to me and that I needed, you know, and also, you know, I living as a migrant worker with my dad, I spend a lot of time alone, you know, and with nobody to talk to. So, you know, this was something that was mine and something that I took with me everywhere, you know. And so I was able to save all these people and moments and just keep them with me. Like, yeah, like I don't know how to explain it. It was my little time machine. So I always took all these friends, and not just friends, but situations with me everywhere I went. And I had these things in file, you know, like people's names and stuff. I know it's a little creepy, but you know, it's like I lived a very long periods of time alone with my dad. So this camera really was a savior, you know, at this time. And of course, I'm talking about the early days, the late, early 80s, 79 on.
Yeah, I love your expression of seeing it as a time machine. Um, do you have any plans for it? Are you planning on making a book or putting it on a website, or like what are your plans?
Well, there's currently a book out that's been out for a bit. For anyone who hasn't seen it, I was at a show at, you know, I was in that Made of LA, what was it, 2 years ago. I am represented by Rena Spaldings. So I just had a show in New York, and I mean, LACMA just bought some of my stuff, MoMA. I mean, is that what you're asking, or am I oversharing?
No, that's what I'm asking. Thank you. I thank you for mentioning that book. What is it called? I didn't quite catch the title there.
I know it's a long provisional. I forget the exact title. Provisional Notes Towards a Disappeared City. And I was telling my friend here that the title wasn't really just about the things that are gone physically, you know, the city changing in a physical form, but also the idea that you can't go back, you know, of the disappeared city, you know, like when you leave a place and you come back, and you know, you always think you can go back to something, but you know, you never can go back. You can never go back. So that's really what I meant. That's really what the title's about just the past. It's the past. It's something I will never be able to go back to. I know, a little morose, but you know, it was really like my gift to the city, my gift to Los Angeles, and to Angelinos as a whole, but obviously Latinos specifically, because I always felt that we were, you know, we've always played second fiddle, so it was nice to just for once be the top billing. No more footnotes.
And if folks were interested, where would they find your book to purchase?
Amazon.
Okay.
Well, I mean, you could go. Different Light. How tough. That doesn't even exist anymore, right? City Lights on Vermont, and the other one in Echo Park. I just had a reading there. Stories bookstore. A lot of bookstores have it. Also, there's one in Pasadena, Romans.
Great.
But if you don't want to go, and get COVID, you can get it on Amazon.
I'll just ask you one of the questions now. Gabby asks, what would you say are some of the characteristic differences between Los Angeles, Latinx, trans, and queer communities from the 80s and 90s and post then, the 2010s and on?
What is the difference?
If you've noticed any.
Well, there's a lot of, I would think, but not just with us, I think in general, the way everybody navigates the world now is so different than, the one I experienced in my youth or in my teens or in my 20s or my 30s. And obviously that would spill onto Latino folk. But, I know it's funny that usually I've been trying to toot my horn about not what set us apart, but what, made us a part of. We've been a part of everything in the city. And I feel that we've always been kind of put in our own box, and as it's happening again now, because inclusion is so important now, that all these institutions are like scrambling to put together these fucking shows. And I feel like we're going back to the old group show of only Latino folk. And I'm like, well, I just feel like I don't think that's what we were really hoping for the future as far as inclusivity. At least in my case, I see myself as part of the picture. And so obviously, if I'm going to show my work, I want to be shown in a museum or in a gallery as part of something that, we are a part of everything that goes on, not just in this fucking city, but in the whole country and in the planet and whatever. So to give us our own issue of a magazine or our own show, I feel like is regressive. Though, it's nice. Thank you. It's like, I know this is going to sound terrible. The road to hell's paved with good intent, and everything's well intended. I get it, but I just think it'd be nice to be given to not only depend on these time allotments given to us, and like they give us our table, but like in the other room. It's like, and I don't want our own table. I want to be part of the discussion in one table. And so to go back in time, it's like, oh, how are we different then and are we different now? I'm like, well, back then as we are now, we've been, and I think this is one of the things I try to show with the film, the movie I've shown or the work I've done, is to show us being part of things, part of all these things going on, like with music and cinema and name it, we've been part of all these things and not exclusively a Latino thing. Does that make any sense? I don't know if I started rambling to one in some other direction, but anyway. How are we different than now? I don't know. We have cell phones and we have all this digital media. If anything, the difference now also is that we have all these venues where we can create, and expose our work, which is kind of cool.
Ruben would like to know when the last time you were at La Plaza was.
Good question, man. I think it was I think it was the 90s. I haven't been back there since the 90s, like 98 maybe. I think there's some images there that were taken the very last time I was there of this girl looking in the mirror. And that was it. I haven't been back there in a long time. But I hear it changed hands. Now it's like a new owner. I forget. Yeah. Well, you know, my mama used to go to La Plaza back when it was on, I think she told me it used to be on Santa Monica. Like it, the first place was somewhere else. And then they moved it to this one on La Brea later. Which goes to that whole importance of queer space, which I think, I mean, there you go. I think that's something that young queers don't seem to think it's as important as we once did. And I think they're wrong. I think one day we'll find out that, you know, that these spaces are definitely needed. Anyway, yeah. Next question.
No, that was one of the questions I wanted to ask you or talk to you about was just, I came out around 92 and just the difference in the amount of spaces from that time and now seems a lot fewer.
Well, if there's any, you know, like, well, and I'm talking about all the like queer, the bars and the cafes and stuff where they were specifically gay. And even though I am not a separatist kind of queen, and I don't even like the idea of a fucking West Hollywood, but that's a very different thing than having a space where you feel, you know, like you're around your own folk. And I don't know, I mean, I know it's a kind of, if, you know, very thin line there, but I do think they're important, you know. Especially, I mean, I just think that we have been dulled to sleep with all this fucking shows on TV that makes us think that we're all accepted and all this stuff. But I don't know. I mean, if we learn from history, is how quickly things can change, you know? And look at what just happened now with Roe versus Wade. I mean, who would have thought this was going to be overturned? We're next. I'm just saying. Anyway, I don't mean to be a paranoidal queen.
I hear you. So I've noticed that some of your images have flash and some don't.
Most don't.
Most don't.
Yeah. Well, it's because a flash fucking kills the ambiance, you know? It's like, it really flattens everything. But sometimes you need it because there's no light whatsoever. So I really did try to marry the two, you know, try to just throw a little speck of light so that you would have some contrast. But most of the time I try to leave the light because, you know, that's like the most important thing of an image. You're painting with light, obviously. And not only this, but every space has its own light signature in every city. You know, in Los Angeles, you know, this was like the land of the film noir for a reason. You know, this city really lent itself for that dark and light space. And I really feel that's one of the things that has gotten lost in this new suburbanized version of LA that has gotten overlit and oversafe. You know, it's like, everything's so well lit for the sake of safety that you have really lost that whole feel of, you know, Kiss Me Deadly and, you know, those old, you know, what LA was known for. And so I really do think that every space has its own light kind of thing. And so I try to preserve this with my imagery. And interesting love now, because of this whole new marriage between digital and analog, which I've been digitizing, you know, the neg into a digital file. is that, you know, with digital photos, you know, you're never gonna see a scratch or a speck of dust and stuff, which is the stuff that back when I was young, in the old days, that was the thing that you're always fighting to get that pristine negative. But now, you know, I'm like, I don't know, it's kind of cool to kind of see an imperfection in this new era of cleanliness and perfection. Well, digital perfection. 0, 1 doesn't have any space for these kind of things like dust and scratches.
Yeah.
Oh, if they have their own thing, but yeah, it's.
Is there anything else that you wanted to say before we finish your slideshow?
I can't think of anything. I'm like, I feel like I've overspoken. No. Does anyone have another question?
Well, we're gonna, why don't you stop sharing and we'll move on to the question and answer period. Thank you so much.
Sharing is caring.
Thank you so much for that. Those are beautiful images. So like I said, now we would like to move on to the Q&A section. If you have any more questions, feel free to type those in the chat function there, and we will address those. All right, let's see here.
Oh, I want to just show this thing. Where's the camera? This is my family in the 40s. My grandmother and her husband. Funny, that's the one that was murdered in that scene with all the blood in the bed. That was the one that got croaked. Boom.
Yeah.
Just in case anyone wanted to know.
Thank you.
Oh, great.
Yeah. I have a question for Coyote. You mentioned your book, you talked a little bit about all kin is blood kin. And I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit more about your book making process, because making a book, and Reynaldo, you can also chime in on this because you've made a book as well. It's its own thing. It's very different from putting up a gallery show. If you could just talk a little bit about that, how that process has been for you, what you've learned maybe, and when it's coming out, of course.
Yeah, I feel like the work that I shared was the prototype that I've just been kind of like bridging work that I've made in the past, or different like yeah, just different detail photos and writings and pieces from that. But it's something that I don't have as like an expected date to come out, because it's something that I want to be really like to return to and to keep bringing that body of work into as I like grow older and as I continue to make the work, which is why I really love to see Reynaldo's photo book and the way that it's like literally from years and years of like your practice. Because I think sometimes we're very like eager to be like, oh, output, we need to put something out, or we need to like finalize this project. And for me, with like All Kin Is Blood Kin, the photo book, it's something that, unlike some of the shows they've done before, is very eager to be like, I want to return to my hometown and I want this to be something like present for and as a gesture of like love to my queer family there. I feel like with the photo book, I'm a little bit more patient with.
You said it all. Well, you know, what did I learn from this thing? Well, this book was, you know, a long time in the making, and I think that the thing that kind of pushed it forward was this idea that, I don't know, I felt that we Latinos were going to become an endangered species in Los Angeles. So I thought, you know, I wanted to make this as a testament that we were once here, right? And I had been wanting to do it also as a gift also to the people in the book. That a lot of these performers, they just came and left and didn't leave anything behind. You know, it's like, and I felt they were so important in their day, and they never got to know how important they were. You know, not just for themselves, but for us, for humanity. It's like what they did mattered, and I felt that this book was a gift to this, you know.
Yeah, beautiful. Someone is asking Reynaldo, like, you mentioned a little bit about some of your jobs there while you were a photographer, and like how you supported yourself throughout your photography journey. They were asking a little bit more, like, did you find a career that you've loved aside from photography?
No, because photography was never a career. Yes, I made money with it, but most of the time it was just like minor because it cost so much to do, So I did make some money here and there working, I did some stuff for the LA Weekly or random things where, like a lot of the performers would buy photos from me. But no, I mean, I never saw photography as a source of income. It was a very personal thing for me, so it was done for myself, you could almost say keep my sanity, but I don't know, sanity was never an important thing in my world.
So you had to do day
uh,
jobs.
oh my God, you don't even want to know. I've done everything. I worked for an escort service. Well, I wasn't the escort. Well, actually, wait, I did too. I've done so many wacky, random stuff that I don't even know if you could do this now and survive because rent alone is so expensive. But back then you could have a million shitty jobs because your rent was $300. So you could, like have a life and have crappy jobs that you would quit, go on vacation, come back and get another shitty job. I worked for La Luz de Jesus. I actually used to work answering phones for a hooker service. I've done a lot of random things, I could go on for an hour, but what's the point?
I think that's why even or I always get like questions all the time of like, oh, how do you support yourself as like a working artist? Like how do you, and I feel like a lot of it is just constant juggle, like you're doing 1,000, wearing so many different hats. And so when people ask like, what do you do for work? I'm like, what do I not do for work? Because it's just so much taking on at the same time. Even when I was talking about like, I feel very grateful at this place in my life as someone who has like never had my parents like support me financially or pay rent or anything like that, to be doing like 10 different creative fields that like help house me and feed me.
Well, I tell you, in the past, I think one of the reasons also that I never seem to make art my career. I always managed to ruffle someone's feathers that was in the right place. And so I always ended up not being included in anything. And ironically now, the last few years, I've been actually making a living off this. But, it's interesting that it would happen, now. But back in those days, especially, this art world is so small and so incestuous. And especially when you're talking about POC part of it, it's like so petty and you have to suck so much ass that I couldn't do it. And, there was a moment there where I was, really getting there, like showing and doing lectures and all this stuff. But it just required so much ass kissing that I just couldn't do it. But so luckily now I don't have to do any of that.
Right. Your work speaks for itself. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just like, yeah. And I'm speaking for it now too.
Exactly. Gretchen asks, Coyote, can you tell us a little bit more about how you got started in photography?
Yeah, I feel like I've always been doing work for like, I don't know. I started in Oahu where I grew up. And it wasn't until actually like my top surgery that I started to really turn the camera onto myself. And I've talked a little bit about this too with Reynaldo, like outside of this, like talking about like self-documentation, and turning the camera on myself has been a lot of process of being like, I just wanted to have these moments that would never happen again, and to be able to really have like, you know, uh these, like, again, I was talking about keepsakes earlier, but I knew that for my top surgery, like this is something that I've been really, you know, for so much of my life working towards. And it was something that I wanted to have photographs of, but to create them myself. And that was the moment when I really started to like look at like, oh, like what are ways that I can like create with this like newfound agency that I had in that. A lot of photos I was doing before, especially growing up on the island of like Oahu, you know, we have so much like wedding photography and like, to, you know, so like different things like that that you'd have to like pay the bills. So a lot of the work that I was doing before was a lot more commercial, or I was working with like fashion magazines and doing photos and like portraits of people. I started working at like in New York, I was working for like Teen Vogue, Milk Media, Refinery, like doing a lot of media photography, which would be a lot of like artist profiles. So it'd be like portraits of like singers or portraits of like fashion designers and their work. Working with a lot of designers and documenting their clothing. And so, you know, that kind of like still filters into where I'm at now, where I'm still doing photos for like clients like Diesel, G Star, Calvin Klein. But at the same time, it's I'm still able to prioritize my personal practice. And that comes like, you know, the images that are known for me is that, rather than the work that I'm doing to like, you know, sustain me for the year. And versus before, I feel like a lot of the work that I was doing was a lot of these like journalism or like cover stories, or looking at like photos to attach with writing that would, you know, go about like someone's like personal work and to support other artists, than rather than where I'm at now. So it really took me kind of, I feel like a lot of my work transformed a lot even through the pandemic, with thinking of really actually having to sit with myself and to be like, who, because a lot of other photographers that were doing artist profiles and things like that, they're doing these like Zoom photo shoots, or like, you know, FaceTime photo shoots. And for myself, I didn't go that avenue. I didn't start being like, okay, let me troubleshoot and continue doing these artist profiles that way. I started to look at like, who do I have like in my home space that I feel like comfortable creating with. And that's when my wife and I got married, like in the beginning of the pandemic. I also, my top surgery was during quarantine. And so it was a time in my life where I was like, who do I have to like create with, and like how do I keep making? And I feel like a lot of being a photographer outside of capitalism and industry and you know, work life, a lot of it is just like, what do you want to create and what do you want to make, and like how do you just continue that act of like creation, where it doesn't feel like you're focusing too much on output. And so that's how I kind of kept returning back to like the images that I'm making now.
Gotcha. Thank you. Reynaldo, we only have a couple minutes left, but someone wanted to know what's next for you. What's next on your agenda?
Yes. Well, I'm currently working with someone from Univision. No, I don't know. I mean, I don't even know. I'm working all kinds. Okay, a show with putting another show for Rena Spellings currently. That's all I can. I think that's the only one that I can really talk about. All the other stuff is kind of tentatively. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
But
Thank you so much.
I'll be out there when I'm done.
Yeah. And we did put both of your links to your website, Coyote, and then to your Instagram in the chat. So folks, check that out regularly, and you'll get updates, or you'll see updates from these wonderful artists. Well, that brings us to our time. I want to, first of all, thank LACP for creating this space to have this discussion tonight. And I want to thank Coyote Park and Reynaldo Rivera for sharing your wonderful work and giving us some information about how that work was created and why. And I wanted to thank everyone who showed up tonight and spent this time with us. And thank you all so much. And I hope everyone has a great week. Take care of yourself, be kind to others. Have a good night, everybody.